Outline the reasons why you support the baker's right to not bake this gay equality cake.
So it comes down to freedom of speech, as has been said, and that distinction that Peter Tatchell emphasised between the message and the messenger is the distinction that we have been emphasising throughout this time, and it's the very distinction that the Supreme Court drew. I mean, it's been a very difficult 4.5 years for that family. They are just quiet, ordinary, gentle Christian people. Anyone who has ever seen Daniel MacArthur reading out his statements outside court over the past 4 years after the various hearings and judgments will know that he's been emphatic that Gareth Lee, the man who ordered the cake in this case, was always welcome in his shops and will always be welcome in his shops. That it just came down to an issue of conscience, that sometimes if there is a message which you are asked to help promote and you don't agree with that message, that impinges on your conscience. But because they did that, people have called them all sorts of names, as we've just heard. People have impugned their motives. They've had harassing phone calls. They've had death threats. They've had, all sorts of hassle. And I don't think that, I obviously think that's grossly unfair.
I completely understand that any kind of harassment that they have received is obviously absolutely abhorrent and unacceptable. But I think the thing that people, myself, take issue with is this idea that it's a message, this idea that it's an idea, when, to me, as I said to you earlier this week, that sexuality is not an idea. Sexuality isn't a political stance. It's something that is ingrained in you as very much as your race or your identified gender or anything else along those lines. And an idea you can change, an idea you can debate. I could, a lot of people say that this, make the comparison, as we had a caller earlier saying, should you be able to make a Nazi cake? Well, no, you could turn down a Nazi cake because being a Nazi is a choice. Sexuality isn't. And that's why I believe that sexuality and the message of equal rights for sexuality trumps the rights of someone who has a religious belief, which is just that, a belief.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is that homosexuality manifests in behaviour. Race does not manifest in particular behaviours, but homosexuality manifests in behaviour. And actually, the discussion about whether homosexuality, whether people are born gay, is part of the discussion about which we have to be able to have freedom of speech. I mean, Peter Tatchell, of course, famously said years ago, homosexuality is a choice and should be celebrated as such. I understand that, some people would experience homosexual feelings within themselves from a young age and would say very strongly that they feel they were born that way, and other gay people would not agree with that.
So how would you explain
that they experienced that they began to experience those feelings and to begin to enter into those kinds of relationships later on in their life? So that the born this way argument, all I'm saying about that this morning, because we're here to discuss the Supreme Court, is that is part of the free speech discussion that we ought to be able to have. And same-sex marriage is a change to the law which has been made in Great Britain, has not been made in Northern Ireland. And again, that particular message has to be part of the free speech discussion that people are able to have. You can't say, people can be forced to support changing the law of marriage in Northern Ireland. You can't say that people must be forced to support that particular political change.
Are you? May I ask? Are you a heterosexual man, Simon?
I am, but I mean, I'm not on here this morning.
No, but I'm just
sexuality.
No, I'm just interested.
Yours.
I'm interested in just the point you made, because when did you make the decision to be straight?
I didn't come on here to talk about myself and my own personal experience.
But I'm afraid you brought up, Simon. You brought up, Simon, the fact that the sexuality isn't a choice.
It's a deeply personal question, and if I'd known, if you wanted to talk about that, your researchers could have asked me beforehand, and I could have, whether or not I wanted to come on.
At no point was it
personal experiences.
But at no point in our previous debating have you questioned. Certainly, when we were on television earlier this week, you didn't question whether sexuality was born to you or whether it was a choice. That's something you've not said before. So obviously, we're going to.
I did say that on the sofa, but we were talking over each other at the same time. The phrase I used was that is part of the free speech discussion in this case. So anyway, I just think that because there was a political message on this cake about changing the law in Northern Ireland, I think most people just get that you shouldn't be able to be sued and to support that message. And most people think, whether they agree with the McCarthys or whether they don't agree with the McCarthys, I think most people think just leave them alone.
So just
leave them alone. Why hold them through the courts?
But to clarify where you stand, Simon, then, because you said something very else interesting on the sofa as well this week about your religion, because religion is a choice, religion is a belief, religion is like. In my opinion, a political opinion. It's something that can be asserted that you believe in a God, whatever God that might be, and that is a decision that you have made. But for you, you've got kind of the opposite view completely. You think that the sexuality isn't a choice, is a choice rather, but the religious part of you isn't. And I think there is the fundamental difference in opinion.
Let me clarify. So what I said that I said I could not change my religion. Now that I am a Christian, I could not change it. I could not just walk away from it. It absolutely goes to the core of me. We can have a long kind of theological discussion about the nature of religion in the soul. I obviously believe in the Christian faith. I believe in the teachings of the Bible. I believe that salvation is God's work in a human being. We can have a lover, come on there and talk about salvation and the Christian faith. You don't want me to do that. But what I think most people would agree is that, I became a Christian when I was about 17. So I converted from a kind of non-Christian background. So that's my stories. I think I told you, but. Most people would accept that once a person has a religious faith, it is deeply personal to them. It is deeply ingrained in them. So that was simply the point that I was making. Was that I do think that having a religious faith deserves respect too, and that's what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court ruling. I mean, Christo, I'd encourage you to read the Supreme Court ruling because I think that it may possibly put to rest some of your concerns, because you would see that the Supreme Court very much thinks as you do, and you and I and the Supreme Court all agree on this.
No, I get it that it was the message, not the messenger.
No, more than that. All people have dignity. All people have worth. All people have value. All people deserve respect, whether you are gay or Muslim or Christian or atheist or whoever you are. And so that is strongly underlined.
But they didn't underline that, unfortunately, in my opinion, in their ruling. So, Sophie has a question for you.
So obviously, hello. So you think that the bakers involved that said no, that they have a right to freedom of speech, and this is a freedom of speech issue, yes?
Yeah, everybody's right to freedom of speech, yeah.
So why do you not like it when people openly... I don't agree with the death threats, obviously, but why did you, at the beginning of the interview, that you sort of said you were so against the harassment and the abuse they've been getting? And obviously there are lines with that. And then also that they've had to go through the courts on this, because I think if you look at it from a balanced point of view, I think both sides are right to. I think they have the right to. The couple have the right to say no, I don't want to do that, and people have the right to openly insult them and mock them and take them through the courts. So for me, I think your freedom of speech argument is inconsistent. But I think it should be made difficult.
I said it was difficult, and if you want to say that. Call them names as you did at the beginning of the piece, and then I'm not going to sue you for that. They're not going to sue you.
Okay, it's just your tone was a bit different at the beginning.
Well, I just think the way that they've been treated has been terrible, and a lot of people do. But I'm not going to sue you for it. I'm not going to try and get the Equality Commission to help me to sue you for saying what you said. But that's what did happen to them. So I think I'm being pretty consistent. And you know, they were sued. They were dragged to the courts. That was a very difficult time for them. And again, I just think a lot of people look at them. Some people look at them and agree with them and think the poor people, leave them alone. Other people look at them and don't agree with them, but they still think just let them get on with it. They're not just leave them be. Why put them through all this? But because I mean, you know, you listen to whatever Ian Hislop on How I Got News for You last night, and you know, I mean, he doesn't remotely agree with the Christian faith, with what the Bakers would believe about marriage, but he just strongly endorses the idea that this is a free speech matter, and it's free speech because it cuts both ways. It cuts all ways.
No, because I don't. But again, I go back to my fundamental point with you, Simon, in as much as you are born. I know you don't perhaps agree, but you are born into your sexual orientation, meaning that actually the rights of the way in which they're born, which I do equate with race, with gender, with all of those things, those rights trump the rights of someone who is religious, because one is an opinion and one is not. And that's where, because, you know, otherwise I worry we're getting to the stage where, now I realise that the Bible has some really lovely parts in it as well, really tolerant parts. I absolutely get that. But there are also, it's fair to say, if you take them very literally, parts of the Bible that could be construed as quite racist. There are parts of the Bible that could be construed as very sexist. Are we going to end up in a situation where a bakery, because I don't believe this for a second, I believe that this was the LGBT community being targeted, because I do not believe for a second if a woman on International Women's Day went into that bakery and said, I want a cake saying, you know, equality to women, those bakers would have said, well, actually, sorry, a woman should never have an authority over a man, or a woman should never, ever be equal to a man as per this passage in the Bible, so we're not going to bake that cake. That would not have happened.
There's 2 points here. Going back to the first point you made about, you know, about the kind of born this way argument. I've said what I think about that.
Yeah, I know, I get it, but that's my fundamental argument.
Indeed, and I see that. But there are some people who are born in a religious culture, and for them, they would argue that their religion was part of them from the time that they were born. So, your argument.
But it's still a choice.
Kind of backfire on itself there.
No, it's still a choice, though. It's still, they don't have to, when they're an adult, continue that. They could at 18, they could decide against it. They can read other things.
But I mean, you talk about it like it's just deciding what newspaper you buy. A religion is much, much deeper than that. It's much more important than that. It's much more inherently a part of a person than that. And that is why the law gives rights based on religion. Now, you can argue about whether that you should or shouldn't have happened, but it has happened, and it's happened because the law has a high view of the importance of religion to a person. You've got the European Court of Human Rights, you've got the UN declarations, you know, all of them strongly undergird freedom of religion because it's such an important part of a person's identity. And let me try to briefly deal with the argument about the Bible. The United Kingdom, for example, is a country with a long Christian heritage, and the experience of most people is that they see the impact that Christians have had on our society, and that they largely feel that that's been a positive impact. Why is it that for centuries it was Christians and churches who founded schools, who founded orphanages, who founded hospitals? You know, they see that the way Christians read the Bible and how that impacts them in their lives, and they're not these horrid, racist, sexist bigots that you.
No, but sorry, with respect, Simon, that wasn't the point I was making, though.
What I'm saying is, I'm saying you're misreading the Bible, because it is not that kind of.
No,
book.
but you can cherry. We're
not going to solve the issue of how to read the Bible this morning.
But what I'm saying is that you can, which is why I was very careful to point out that there were really nice parts of the Bible that are very pro-equality, that say that your man is your neighbour is equal to you. My point is, though, that by taking this principle of the Supreme Court upholding them, saying that their religious belief is against, it goes against their views on the support gay marriage case, you could cherry pick a quote from the Bible that doesn't support some of the other quotes, because I think we'll both agree there are probably some contradictions in there, and you could take that particular quote and say, well, actually, I can use that quote to not be pro-women.
Well, here, I can help you on that one, because, I mean, leaving aside the question of whether there are contradictions in the Bible, I honestly don't think there are, but when a court is looking at a person who is claiming to be exercising rights based on religion, they will look at the cogency and the coherence of those beliefs. And that may include some discussion of whether they stand in a particular tradition or strand or mainstream tradition of their beliefs. So you can't just say, this is, you can't cherry pick so easily. You have to have some genuineness and sincerity to your beliefs. And so part of the Supreme Court discussion in this case was just to confirm that these were genuinely their beliefs and that they were sincerely held. There aren't actually churches that meet to discriminate against people around race and sex and so on. That doesn't.
But there are quotes that do. There are absolutely quotes that do. There are quotes that in that Bible that do that.
I'm leaving aside the Bible. There aren't churches or Christian people in this country that operate on that basis. So there's not. It's not a.
Wasn't there a debate about women vicars?
I want to come back and say to you, think about the gay baker. The gay baker should not have to bake a cake for me at the Christian Institute saying oppose same-sex marriage. If I go into his store and ask him to help me with one of my Christian Institute campaigns, and he says, look, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I would feel so uncomfortable with that. I would respect that. And I've been turned down for all kinds of business on that kind of basis. And I haven't sued those people.
But Simon, I think my issue with this is I think the general principle in certainly England is that being gay and married is okay. And it's very much okay, and it's very much accepted. And I think the reason why people get angry at this case is because it's basically the church is basically saying that they don't like gays, and that's what I think this case symbolises. And I think it's very clear.
That's grossly unfair.
I don't think, or that being gay is wrong. That's what's at the crux of this. Because as you said, they a Christian baker wouldn't reject an International Women's Day cake. They wouldn't, but they would reject this. And it comes down to the fact that this case implies that that certain Christians have an issue with gay people, and I think that's why people get angry about this. And I don't see how.
Sorry.
No, you go on.
Thank you, Sophie. I was going to say, I don't accept that description of them having a problem with gay people. So the Christian person, the person who feels a conscience about this, is the person who yes, takes the Bible seriously, feels that it is a word of God. But
why do they have a conscience about that?
Well, because I'm trying to explain. So they feel that it speaks to them, first of all, to them about their own behaviour, their own choices, and what God wants from them, what God regards as good and what God regards as bad. And it primarily applies to them. But then, the scenario here is not that the Ashes Bakery was looking for an opportunity to go out and demonstrate its opinions against same-sex marriage. Somebody came to them and said, help me to promote that what I believe, that same-sex marriage is a good thing. Okay? So it came to their front door, as it were. And their conviction was, no matter how much I may respect this person, no matter how much I may not want to get into this fight, I'm being asked to endorse something which I believe the Bible clearly teaches is not something which God regards as a good thing, but they want me to say it's a good thing. That's where the issue of conscience comes in.
I think, Simon, that's where I'm never ever going to understand it, because the very parts of the Bible that state that being gay is wrong, they also sort of state that eating shellfish is wrong. What if I wanted a big lovely lobster? What if I wanted a cake made of that was shaped like a lobster?
Honestly,
what if I wanted a clothing company that did mixed fibres?
Why is it that for centuries Christians have understood this distinction between the civil law, the moral law, and the ceremonial law? Do you know what? That distinction between the Levitical ceremonial laws to do with dress and shellfish.
What about prawns?
And yes, that distinction between.
So if I wanted a big lobster cake, that would be okay.
and what I'm saying is, look, when Christian people sometimes talk about science to try and prove their point, and you realize that they haven't got a clue about science, and it's a bit embarrassing. I'm afraid the way you're talking about the Bible is like that. It's a bit embarrassing. Because
by reading actual direct quotes from the Bible?
No, because for centuries, Christians have understood the clear distinctions in Scripture between the moral law, which is permanent and binding, and the civil and ceremonial law, which is not.
So then explain it, Simon.
39 articles of the Church of England, which are written into the Constitution of this country, have been for hundreds of years, and they make that distinction.
So why
the moral law is binding, not the ceremonial.
So
law.
why does the same section of the Bible where it says man must not lie with another man, which does also say that man shouldn't eat a scavenger in the sea, but should eat things that have scales and fins, also saying that it's an abomination regarding mixed fibres? Why was the man lying with another man part of that ending up in some sort of moral law, but the bits about the shellfish and the mixed fibres, how do they end up being sort of separated somewhere else? Because to me, when I read it, I see it as all the same.
Well, but that's because you have to read the Bible as a whole, and anyone who's ever read the New Testament will know that distinction is made. I mean, let's not forget that you also got in Leviticus some of the rules about loving your neighbour and justice and all those things in which you and I would agree. So the fact is that the New Testament helps us to understand the Old Testament, and of course, everybody understands the distinction between the Old and New. Is the New Testament brings in the idea of Christ and his death on the cross for sinners, and doing away with the ceremonial law. That is part of the whole purpose for which Christ came, was to bring an end to that dispensation and start a new dispensation.
To me, that sounds...
It's a fantastic theological discussion, which I'd love to have.
But that sounds to me like the word we're looking for is cherry picking. That really does. It sounds like, well, we're going to take that bit and we're going to make that a bad thing, but the other bits that are probably a bit more absurd to people, like the shellfish and the mixed fibres, we're going to leave those and say that the Old or New Testament doesn't really make sense of those, and it's a different thing. And that, to me, is, I think, the fundamental reason why I said that there were contradictions.